Ooh, I just got hit by some warmth. That's nice considering a couple days ago, like 48 hours ago, I was in Vegas. It was 107 degrees. Right now it's about 62 degrees back in Portland because, well, one is Vegas and one is Portland. I'm in, I guess you could say this is generally, I'm still in the Pearl, but it's kind of where the Pearl is starting to turn towards the Slabtown area, which is where kind of all these big bougie high-rises and whatnot kind of start to fade off, and it starts becoming more warehousey and sparse. There's some nice places in the Slabtown area, but stuff like this is very, very Pearl. Did I just flip you off? I'm sorry. I was trying to do an okay sign, and I just put up my middle finger. But I guess it was pointed that way, so I guess I was flipping these people off over here. You try some things, you fail. Anyway, I'm heading towards what is more the Slabtown area, the kind of scatterbrained area north of downtown, directly north of downtown Portland. I'm trying to get to the intersection of, is it 17th? Yes, 17th, Northwest 17th and Xavier. I'm guessing that's how you pronounce it. It's only recently that I even learned that the street even exists. Because from Burnside, way over there, it's all alphabetical. Burnside, B, Cooch, C, Davis, D, Everett, E, so on and so forth. But it's spelled S-A-V-I-E-R, so I'm guessing it's Xavier. Because back, I'm not certain if it's August 18th or August 19th, 1922, because it happened right around midnight. So it may have been a couple minutes before midnight, putting it on the 18th, or a couple minutes after midnight, making it the 19th. I'm going to go with the 19th. I'm going to say it was right at midnight, because that's more dramatic. And if it's right at midnight, it's officially the next day. So I'm going to say August 19th, 1922. There was a place that was regarded as a soft drink shop. Now, mind you, this is roughly 2 years after Prohibition went into effect, so when I see that there was a place that was called a soda shop, but there was a bunch of grown burly men going there, I'm guessing there was probably some illegal alcohol, something going on. But anyway, it was a soft drink shop that was located on the southeast corner of 17th and Xavier. And that's going to be the location, again, midnight, August 19th, 1922. That sets the stage for this fresh episode of Historic Murders of Portland. Alright, so apologies out of the gate. One of the other things about Stumptown area, including these old rail lines, there's like highways and freeways, and they're all coming together, and this is very much going to be the environment that I'm in for this video, so I'm just preparing you now. Alright, so I think I'm going the right way. This is a lot of damn confusion. I am going the right way. I know I just need to get kind of over here. And I'm close. I'm trying to get to Xavier. And I'm only a couple blocks away because here's Quimby Street. Which, for the record, any of you people were kids, Ramona Quimby, the famous Ramona stories that I doubt they read to kids anymore. But I know when I was a kid, we read them all the time. Author Beverly Cleary was from Portland and would include a lot of local things in her stories. And there's a Ramona Street as well as a Quimby Street. Same thing with The Simpsons. I don't know why I'm talking about this because it has nothing to do with my story, but I'm here. The guy that started The Simpsons was from Portland. There's a Flanders Street a couple blocks that way. Quimby, I'm pretty sure there's a Quimby character in The Simpsons. So there's a lot of correlations. There's not I don't think there's a Simpson Street in Portland, but there's a lot of other stuff in relation to that. I just thought I'd mention that as I was passing it. Alright, so my God. We're approaching 17th and Xavier is right up here. And that would mean just ahead on this side of the street where these trees are and this general ivy brush, that is where this soda shop would have been located back in 1922. Literally just under where all these like freeway and highway overpasses are. I think this is Highway 30, or I don't know. It's pretty much Highway 30 and I-405 coming together to be the Fremont Bridge. And this is kind of cool. There's like this piece of concrete, this like line of concrete that was maybe like some kind of property divide. That kind of serves me pretty well. Oh, and then it wraps around and goes this way. So I guess this is like a garden area. But I mean, this is probably the border where the soda shop was located. It would have been right here. So here's what happens. It's again approximately midnight on these hallowed grounds. That couple of masked men, 2 to be specific, walk into the soda shop that was located right here. The proprietor was a guy named George Stiff, which is a great name for a guy who runs a bar or soda shop. These 2 guys walk in. One of them, simply put, says, "Hello boys, how are you?" before pulling a gun out. And essentially, the guy that pulls the gun out, holds everybody at bay while the other guy that's with him starts going through all the patrons and starts, taking what they've got. "Give me your money, give me your wallet, give me any jewelry you got, give me that watch, sir." So it's a simple, quick robbery. Nobody should have been hurt. But George Stiff, who if you think you enter the building here, George Stiff is probably in the back here watching this happen and saying, "The hell you're gonna do this in my shop?" He pulls a gun, because everybody who ran a saloon or a bar or a tavern or a soda shop, they had a gun under the bar because people would get out of hand. People were, robberies were a lot more common because you could get away with it more often. He pulled his gun out. And once he pulled his gun out, the one robber who had pulled his gun while the other guy was picking people's pockets, he opened fire, and they start opening fire on each other. Stiff comes out from behind the bar to get a closer shot. The robber with the gun shoots him. I think he hits him in the arm or the leg or maybe both. So he drops at that point. He ends up being fine. He survives. He's just a little wounded. Pride probably a little bit shot. But of course there's gunfire happening, so they have to bail. The robbers need to bail at this point. So the guy drops, hits George Stiff. George Stiff drops. Him and the one robber with the gun and his cohort decide to bail, but as they're bailing, they're kind of like, like the Old West, like as they're running into a building, they're just kind of shooting erratically. More to kind of protect themselves than anything else. If anybody's going to open fire on them, it's like cover. They keep firing. Well, unfortunately, as these 2 robbers were trying to flee in a shootout that just broke out at this soda shop, where in the midst of the shooting, nobody actually died. As the robbers were fleeing, probably out onto the sidewalk, where they eventually fled that direction, one of these stray shots they fired as they were bailing struck a patron, a guy named Marco Botich. One of the stray shots hit him, dropped Marco Botich, and he died as a result of that one stray bullet that hit him. Marco Botich was actually shot in the stomach and died on his way to the hospital. And what I love, in addition to that concrete thing over there, there's a little like mini pathway here. So we can almost imagine like this is the front door to the soda shop. They're running out of here, you know, shooting is going on in here, and as the guy with the gun is leaving, he's kind of just like shh, 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 and they just start running, and Marco Botich gets hit in here, drops, and then dies shortly after. And the two men that engaged in this robbery turned murder presumably start booking it this direction, because they're not seen again till they're near Marshall, which again, it's all alphabetical, so Marshall, Xavier to Marshall, M-N-O-P-Q-R-S. So about 6 blocks later, this direction is the next time that the robbers are seen by anybody. So it's known that they traveled north after the shooting and robbery that happened back here. Ooh, it's a lot more quiet. So here I am. This is 17th and Marshall. So literally these robbers, they did a straight 6-block shoot directly up 17th, where they got to Marshall and it seems they turned. And this block is the first place that they were seen by another witness. Probably they were seen by another witness because they were probably running erratically and probably attracted a lot of attention. The witness did notice, because they reached 17th and Marshall and then turned and ran towards a car that was parked closer to 18th and Marshall, right up here. And the witness did take note that one of the men was helping the other to the car, like he'd been injured, and he had obviously been hit by a stray bullet. This had to be the guy that was collecting people's goods, as the other one had his gun trained on everyone. It was likely hit by a stray bullet. You'd have to presume it came from a shot that George Stiff fired, since the idea is one of the robbers has his gun trained on Stiff and other people, his associate, collecting up people's belongings, would either be next to him or behind him. So it seems kind of far-fetched that one of his shots would have hit him. It was probably a stray bullet from Stiff, but anyway, they run to their car, parked somewhere in this vicinity. They say around 18th and Marshall, which this is 18th and Marshall right here, so probably somewhere right here. They run to a car. The one uninjured guy helps his injured friend into the car. They start it up and they speed off and disappear into the night. And it's a stretch to think that they are ever going to be apprehended. And the presumption ultimately is, at least that the police reached, I don't know how they reached it, they didn't have much to go on, was these two robbers likely bailed north, which would end up serving very interestingly in this case. Again, we have a witness saying one of the men is injured. Police, when they reported the scene, they found blood along the sidewalk. Obviously, this probably isn't the same sidewalk that was here in 1922, but they found blood there to further determine that, yes, one of these men, it wasn't just, he didn't just like pull a leg and was, he didn't pull a muscle and was hobbling. He'd been hit by gunfire. The blood evidence was there. Within days of this shooting happening and knowing that one of these men had been injured and had been bleeding, a person driving near the vicinity of Carson, Washington, stumbled onto a man along the highway who was trying to hail down a ride and was grabbing really tightly at his stomach, like he'd been injured or wounded, and was kind of, and again, this is probably days later, he probably had a very poorly done, probably just had it like bandaged up and was just, you know, kind of just wounded and probably hadn't had it cleaned and was just, you know, just dying out there. And it was thought that that was the wounded individual. Now, his companion, if he was the robber, was nowhere to be found. So it's like, did they split up so it'd be harder to catch him? Did they have a disagreement? Was his shooting partner a piece of crap and saw him as dead weight and just, kicked him out of the car because he was going to slow him down because he was injured. Who's to say exactly? But that's what led police to thinking that maybe these individuals fled north. But still, they didn't have anything to go on. They didn't have a name for this guy that was seen near Carson, Washington. It's not like between Portland and, up in Washington, there was only one person in the world that could possibly have been shot and be wandering around. So you can't determine for any certainty that this was one of the robbers. But still, a month goes by, nothing's happening, and then finally there's a shakeup in the case. So it's September 22nd, 1922, 9/22/22, exactly a month to the day after the robbery and the shooting of Marco Botich. And 2 men are apprehended in Kelso, Washington. 2 brothers, Clifford and Albert Hubbard. It's a lot of names to remember. And they had been traveling around with a guy named Marvin Bailey. And the 3 men had been tied, or at least it was presumed that they were involved in robberies that had happened in Portland earlier in August, like first week of August. About 2 weeks. About 2 weeks before this holdup at this soda shop. And so these 3 men already had, a history of robbery and were on a bit of a robbery spree. They actually left Portland right after these robberies, maybe because they had other places in the world to rob. Maybe they wanted to get out of town for a week or two till the heat came down. But it's known they left sometime after the 5th. And they came back to Portland on August 18th. Literally the day before this robbery happens. And there's actually a service station in southwest Portland that gets robbed. There's, I want to say, a laundry truck got robbed on the night of the 18th, within hours of Marco Botich getting killed during a robbery. This string of robberies starts happening around Portland. There's one in southwest, I believe it was a service station that happened. The Hubbard brothers, Marvin Bailey, this isn't looking good for them. And one of the potential issues with this is only 2 men were seen robbing the soda shop where Marco Botich was killed. But we seem to have 3 guys working in unison. So where's the 3rd guy? That starts putting this whole thing into question. Was it really these guys? Where was the other guy if they work as a trio? Well, one of the things that was noted was I forget exactly how it was determined, but the police determined that the man with the gun at the soda shop, the uninjured one, couldn't drive. He didn't have a license. That wasn't his job. I don't know why. But that was reported in the newspaper by the police. So the presumption was the wounded man drove. But then you're like, that seems risky. Why, So maybe there was a 3rd man waiting in the car, and that these men did the act themselves and then rushed back to the car. They parked the car several blocks from where the incident happened. That way, they'd be able to flee the scene. They wouldn't get seen getting into a car right by the place. I would assume, hearing riffraff and ultimately gunfire, they wouldn't want people coming out on the street and seeing them get into a car right there. They would rather get into a car, another part of town where no one can see them, and flee. So there is the idea that 2 men went in to do this robbery, and another one may have waited in the car, and there you have a trio. Puts these guys back as possibilities, because they were on this string of robberies, none of which did they ever shoot anybody. So it seems like they were doing their best to not commit any further crimes beyond just robbery. They only had the guns in case they needed them. So in the end, George Stiff, the proprietor of this soda house, in these circumstances, he's almost as guilty as the party. Whoever's shot the shooter, whoever the man was that shot Marco Botich, it's likely they were just going to rob everybody and then bail. But George Stiff said not today, pulled his gun out, and that's what started the gunfight. Obviously panicked the shooters, and so they, even as they were bailing out of the place, were still firing back into it in case anybody wanted to fire at them. It gave them cover. And that's how Marco Botich got killed. So had George Stiff not pulled his gun out and just let the robbery happen, yeah, it sucks. People are going to lose stuff. The reputation of his business might take a little bit of a kick. But they likely would have taken everybody's stuff, said, hey, don't do anything stupid, and then backed out and bailed. And nobody would have been shot. That's just my take on it. And then come October 1922, these men are finally, they're charged and they're put on trial. What's really interesting is there's three guys. There's the Hubbard brothers and Marvin Bailey. But only Marvin Bailey and Albert Hubbard would be charged, which is interesting. You think, okay, these guys are known for doing this stuff as a trio, it seems, and ultimately only two of them are robbed. And you start to think, like, well, were these the two that went to the soda shop, and maybe the other Hubbard brother is waiting in the car for him? So he's a getaway man, but he's hardly as responsible, even though he's involved. You start to think, like, okay, well, they're only busting two of the three because they want to bust just the two guys that did the soda shop. Because, yeah, there was this robbery at the service station in Southwest Portland. There's this laundry truck. There's these robberies on the 4th and 5th that happened. But this is the big one, because this one is where they actually had to pull their guns out and open fire. This is the one situation where somebody actually died. So you think, okay, Albert Hubbard and Marvin Bailey are going to be brought to justice for probably multiple robberies, but most importantly for the shooting of Marco Botich. Well, they would only be found guilty of robbing the service station in Southwest Portland, which they even said, the police, as they were searching, before they even found these guys, they were saying that they felt whoever did the laundry truck, whoever did the service station, whoever did those robberies before, they were the same people that were involved in this robbery at this soda shop at 17th and Xavier. But it seems they were only charged for what happened for the Southwest Portland robbery. So it's really confusing, and you wonder how things ultimately turned out that way. Did they check all three of these guys to see if one of them was wounded? One of the robbers was obviously wounded, and even though, a month goes by, they're still going to have a scar. Something's going to be there. How much did they grill these guys? I mean, it seems like this shooting would be the focus. And yet, in the end, all this hoopla happens, and none of these three guys seem to go down for the murder of Marco Botich. And that, unfortunately, is where the trail runs cold. That is where my research, trying to find information on the shooting of Marco Botich, that's where it ended, was October, with the convictions of Albert Hubbard and Marvin Bailey for one in what seemed to be a spree of robberies, one of which ended in the shooting of a man that they were never charged for. And that's where we're left. So if there ever was a full-on resolution to this Marco Botich story, if they ever did establish who did it, I couldn't find it anywhere. I don't know if they prosecuted these guys again later on. I couldn't find any more information about Marco Botich, couldn't find any information about the Hubbard brothers, Marvin Bailey, any of it. It ended with them being prosecuted for a smaller offense, one single offense. God, they probably got off with just a couple years in jail. So as far as I'm concerned, Marco Botich, I guess, in my opinion, is kind of an unsolved murder. I guess officially you'd say it's unsolved because, as far as I can see, nobody was ever charged for it. But, like, at the same time, it seems pretty clear that two of these three guys, maybe all three of them, were involved in it. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. It's hard to say. It seems like they knew they did all these other crimes, and it seems like they were tied to this soda shop one. So it seems like, well, if they're all interrelated and they're all part of this same spree that's being done by the same people, how do you not, even just in legal circles, how do you not just connect them then? How does that not happen? So, I don't know. I'm a little up in the air over whether I think it was just they weren't the guys and it's officially unsolved, or if they were the guys and the prosecution was just horribly, if not awkwardly done. I really don't know. At the end of the day, I guess you'd have to say that it's unsolved still. And that's where we're left at. That's where we're stuck, is wondering what actually happened. Because it's kind of bizarre the way that things ultimately turned out in this case. They're really bizarre. So it's a case from 1922. I guess it's officially unsolved. And that's where we have to leave it. For now. Well, probably forever. It was 97, almost 97 years ago. So, yeah. Anyway, that's it. That's the end of the story in terms of the shooting of Marco Botich. And, I mean, it seems like maybe they would have gotten a second-degree murder charge. More likely a manslaughter, because if the story is the way they say it wasn't an intentional murder, and the proprietor of the place started the shooting to begin with. So, I mean, when all is said and done, you kind of think whoever did this probably would have gotten off on a manslaughter beef with that. But again, what of these other robberies that happened? So anyway, thank you again, guys, for watching this fresh, spicy new episode of Historic Murders of Portland. Another one that seems to be left unsolved. Remember, as always, guys, like, share, subscribe, comment, but keep it courteous. And hit up my Patreon if you want to help me that way, if you know what I mean. You do know what I mean. And till next time, thank you again for watching another episode of Historic Murders of Portland. Catch you later.